Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome into the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, June 5th, 2015. I am Dave Biddle, and I am joined by Bucknuts contributor Jonah Booker. And Jay, look, I want to start off talking about rugby tackling, a rather new phenomenon in the world of football, if you will. Pete Carroll's getting a lot of credit for this kind of being his brainchild, so to speak. He released a video, and a very important person at Ohio State saw said video, that being Chris Ash, and that sparked a little idea in his head, and Chris Ash decided that Ohio State needed to adopt this rugby-style tackling. And it's crazy the difference from one year to the next in Ohio State football as far as they went from a terrible tackling team in 2013, J-Book, to a team in 2014 that didn't just win the national championship, but had the least amount of missed tackles in the entire country of any defense. So, and Chris Ash really attributes to the rugby tackling. You were a football player. You played at Ohio University. You probably played football your whole life. How were you taught to tackle? Were you taught to go high, to go low? Just give us some insights on how you were taught to tackle.
When I played, the tackling technique that I was taught was to bring the head and then bring the body with a pop, with a roll of the hips, which was a similar technique that Ohio State was using. With the rules that are implemented, a lot of the techniques had to be adjusted to accommodate for the targeting rules that was out there. But as you mentioned, Chris Ash and Ohio State implemented the rugby-style tackling that the Seattle Seahawks and Pete Carroll implemented, and boy, what a difference did that make. I mean, as you mentioned in your article on the Bucknuts website, Chris Ash mentioned the missed tackling dropped dramatically, as well as the big plays as a result of the rugby-style tackling.
It is just stunning when you look at, they were a terrible tackling team in 2013. I don't think that's hyperbole. I think Ohio State really was a terrible tackling team in 2013. Chris Ash comes in and didn't immediately bring in the rugby tackling. For anybody who read the story, please do read it on Bucknuts. I think it's very interesting. If you're a Buckeye fan, you're going to really go behind the curtain of what happened. It wasn't like it happened right away after Chris Ash was hired. He waited until after spring ball of 2014, and then it just kind of, he saw that video from Pete Carroll, and a light bulb went off in his head, and he decided this is what Ohio State needed to do, and everybody agreed with him. And it's stunning to me, as somebody who's a huge football fan and somebody who covers this, we'll see teams, J-Book, go from a weakness, a team that might have a weakness, and then the next year they're okay at it. They might even be good at it. Ohio State went from a weakness as a tackling team to arguably the best tackling team in the country when you look at the stats, and then they win the national championship, not just the stats. It's just, I've never seen anything quite like it. Your thoughts?
It's amazing. Just like you said, the difference is the old previous tackling style that was being taught. You had a lot more head-to-head contact, which, could lead to concussions or further injuries. What they're doing now, what they're teaching is to lead with the shoulder, going towards the legs to help stop the running back or other offensive threats from moving forward. And as you mentioned, just the phenomenon from how they went from such a terrible tackling team to all of a sudden these guys are just out there laying the wood. You look at those last playoff games, and throughout the season, it was just a huge, 180 from what they were the previous year. And you have to attribute that to Coach Meyer allowing these guys to participate in tackling drills. A lot of teams, once you start getting into the heart of the schedule, they do away with tackling drills and fundamentals because they only have so much time on the field due to the NCAA rules. You typically see a lot of the tackling and the fundamentals being taught during spring ball and fall camp, but not so much during the season. These guys, as Chris Ash was saying, was doing tackling drills 3 days before the national championship. And the reason they can do that is because of rugby-style tackling. It limits the amount of injuries that these guys are seeing, so it allows them to be able to focus in on the fundamentals of those tackling techniques, and they're able to do it throughout the entire season.
And for the listeners that might be wondering what exactly is rugby tackling, the Cliff Notes version is if you're a defensive player, you're going to shoot low. You're not going to lead with your face. You're going to lead with your shoulder. You're going to shoot low. You're aiming for the thighs of the ball carrier or the knees of the ball carrier, and then you're just going to wrap those thighs, wrap those knees. And the rationale, I mean, it just seems like it's such common sense. Like, how did they not think of this earlier? If you go high, even if you hit the guy hard, I mean, you might hit him hard and knock him backwards, but he might stay on balance. And one thing you do, even if you knock a guy high, what are you doing? You're allowing his legs to keep turning. And I don't know, it's almost surprising to me that it's taken this long, because football coaches are really smart and they study a lot of film, and this is something I'm sure we're going to see a lot of football teams adopt, more and more teams, especially see the Seahawks doing it, the success they've had, and now Ohio State, the king of college football, the success they've had. You're going to see more and more teams do this. But J-Book, it's shocking that it kind of took this long for football to adapt to this or adopt this type of scheme.
Well, I think it also starts with the rule changes. You know, players are getting kicked out of games for, you know, going too high. You see the NFL where guys were fined, you know, thousands of dollars for going too high, and it started with Pete Carroll in Seattle. What was Seattle's, you know, moniker? The Legion of Boom, because they had guys that was out there just laying the wood, but at the same time, these guys were doing this rugby-style tackling, which was limiting the big plays. And as you mentioned, everything in football is a copycat. You're going to start seeing a lot of teams starting to implement this because it's better for the players' long-term safety. The production of the rugby-style tackling has already spoke volumes for Ohio State. You're going to start seeing other coaches teaching this, but it's very odd to me because in your article, Chris Ash said there's not a lot of coaches really out there teaching this type of tackling, but I suspect here, you know, this year coming up and in years to come, yeah, you're going to start seeing a lot of teams implementing this technique going forward because, like I said, the NFL, college football is all about a copycat league, and when teams are starting to be successful with this technique, everybody's going to start to jump on board with it.
Yeah, no kidding, Jay Book. I mean, even if there's a defensive coordinator out there that's reluctant to do this, the head coach, if he's smart, will come to him and say, no, listen, Ohio State's doing it. Have you seen what their defense did from one year to the next? The Seahawks are doing it. Have you seen how successful they are? You're going to do it too. So I think even if there's guys out there who might not want to do it, their bosses might make them do it, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of defensive coordinators that just on their own decide this is the way we need to do it, just like Chris Ash did. It was almost like an epiphany, like, oh my gosh, you know, light bulb moment. This is how we need to do it. We've been doing it wrong. This is how we need to do it. And then not only do they do it, but in the first year, they see so much fruit that they win the national championship. It's just it's amazing how it worked out. And then real quick, switching gears, I could talk about the rugby tackling thing all day, especially with you. I mean, it's just so interesting, but in the spirit of the Bucknuts Morning 5-ish and not making this an hour-long show, let's move on and talk about Austin Mack, who will make his decision on Sunday, or should I say, Jay Book, he will announce his decision on Sunday, because I think he's already made his decision. And, I mean, to call Austin Mack underrated, I think, is a vast understatement. This kid is ranked as the 24th best wide receiver in the country. What do you want to bet Ohio State's coaching staff think he's better than the 24th best wide receiver? Now, he is ranked as the 139th best overall player in the country, so that tells you there's a ton of great wide receivers this year. If 24 of the best 139 players in the country are wide receivers, this is according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. Of course, he is also the second best player in the state of Indiana. Everybody thinks he's going to be a Buckeye. I agree. I think it's a lock, and I don't use that term very often. Bill Kerr never uses that term, but I think he's a lock. But talk about Austin Mack a little bit. I mean, I think he's not just underrated, but vastly underrated. I'm sure you've watched this film and followed this recruitment. Anything you want to say about young Mr. Mack who will make his decision 2 days from now?
Yeah, all signs point to him being a Buckeye. As you mentioned, an underrated guy. I think a lot of that has to do with he tore his shoulder up last year, so he missed quite a bit of the season. And as far as the camp circuit, the Columbus Nike opening combine was his first action, and from all reports, he looked outstanding out there. You're talking about a 6'2", 205-pound wide receiver. He ran a 4.4 at Ohio State camp last summer. The one thing that you really have to like about Austin Mack is he can play in any system. He's not just a system wide receiver, meaning that some wide receivers can't play in the spread. They have to play in the pro. He's talented enough to play in any particular college system because his game is so polished. You're talking about an excellent route runner, a guy that can get in and out of his breaks in a hurry, a guy that can come back to the ball and use his size to ward off defensive backs, but he also has the speed to hit you with a 9 route. This is a guy that Ohio State coveted early on. He's been the top wide receiver on their board for some time now, so it looks like they're going to get their guy this weekend. With the commitment of Austin Mack, Ohio State shoots up past Florida State for the #1 recruiting class for the 2016 class.
Great insights out of my guy, Jonah Booker, a.k.a. J-Buck, coming strong as always. And thank you to all the listeners out there. Appreciate you guys tuning into the show. Hope you have a great day and a great weekend. Take it away, best damn band in the land.